Hey everybody, it's me Andrew. Get out into nature and tune in for yourself. Resonate with the Earth's electromagnetic field via 432 Hz, the universal frequency. Balance out psychologically and emotionally, and further strengthen your brain and your heart's coherence as well. Get a plant-based diet going for yourselves today. Nurture yourself right back into life. We are literally herbivores in our nature. Further balance out your physical body's pH level and to get with alkalinity. Then you can generate some static electricity, sending me some love telepathically. Set attention to your mind and set intention to communicate. That is all there is to telepathy. You are now tuning in to great days. So today I'm going to go over the integration process and integrating the shadow, right? So I'm gonna go into what the shadow is for people who don't know, and I'm also going to get into the actual integration process and the benefits, um, the journey of self-realization, right? So let's get into this. Um, so the shadow is pretty much a deeper aspect to our personality, right? Where we would see the shadow as literally what it is. It's literally like a darker aspect of our personality, one which has been suppressed due to societal conditionings, right? It's this simple. Um, so society is a certain way, right? Due to the fact that society operates on a certain wavelength, the shadow has been created, and in that creation of the shadow, it was put into kind of like a cage at the back of the mind, right? There's plenty of different motif on having like a more feral or a more alienated and suppressed version of yourself, like a doppelganger in a way, at the depths of your mind, right? Where it's just purely dark, and that aspect of yourself or that twin of yourself is has been suppressed, in the subconscious or even unconscious, right? So that's what the shadow is. The shadow is that aspect of you which has been suppressed due to the way society operates, the conditionings and whatnot. We have to act a certain way, otherwise we get terminated. In a sense, there's no actual termination though. This is only some type of punishment. When you were in school, you had to follow various different conditions, various different terms. You had to live on somebody else's terms, otherwise you would be punished. Due to that little system, a very, 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 very integral aspect of your total being has been taken from you. So what it is, it's kind of like a spell, right? It's kind of like an imprisonment. It's a type of mental imprisonment, emotional blockage. It's a type of spell in a way, right? Because they've taken a lot of your power and they have used it against you, right? If you simplify it. So you got to relearn how to integrate the shadow. This is very, very simple. Integrating the shadow is something that happens of itself because you cannot forever remain within the engagement, or you cannot keep any type of suppression because inevitably the suppressed has to come forward. This is a law of energy, I want to say. So, because everything is temporary. So the integration process happens naturally, but you can accelerate the integration process for yourself, right? You can accelerate it through various different methods, right? Um, there's a lot of different methods already out there. The way that I've always gotten closer or integrated the shadow is to pretty much observe yourself a little bit more. You can kind of start in this in a centeredness. If you center yourself and you observe yourself more, then you can understand slowly the various different formulations of energy, right? And it gets simpler. The more that you observe, the more that it simplifies itself. And you're already, through observation, on the path of integrating the shadow, right? So you can integrate the shadow by taking the shadow, the deeper aspect of yourself that you have repressed, and you can literally befriend it, right? So you would take the aspects of yourself that you know that you're suppressing or you're repressing or that you're keeping from the surface level, and work them into the surface level and befriend that version of you, because it's a version of you that has been locked away in a subconscious cage. And the reason that this is so important is because when you do this, there's a tremendous amount of energy that is allowed to flow, right? So there's the whole thing of suppression. You're suppressing yourself. But the moment that you make that integration, or you befriend that parallel version of you, which is darker, right? Then that suppression is released and that energy flows. And when that energy begins flowing, you have much more momentum, gravitational momentum. And with this energy influx, you can come into an empowered state. See, this is getting back into it being a type of spell or something, right? Because there's obviously different organizations, there's priesthoods, there's various different communities, there's a lot of people who are working to keep you in a suppressed state, right? They want to drain your power through various different geographical synthetic operations, right? Which are stealing mass power, and they utilize that power in order to support that whole system, which is keeping you in a disempowered state, right? So it's a monetary system of energy in a sense, right? Because you have various different think of energy as currency, because it is currency. Before money is to keep you distracted from more abundant sources of energy that are just free to generate within yourself. But then there's also systems that are pretty much keeping you within a disempowered state, a low energy level, and they do this for a reason. They do this because they're keeping you in a weak state, like in a cage, you know. They want to keep you in mental cages because you won't have power and you will remain in a slave state, right? This is why there's so much is left secret to us, or there's so much that's left discreet to us. So they're taking energy, especially from deeper dimensions of yourself, and then they're utilizing that very energy to keep you within a imprisoned state. So you have to make that, once you make the integration process, you can begin to start seeing the systems that the shadow is able to comprehend, because the shadow is of a deeper subconscious dimension, right? Whenever you really start receding into the subconscious, then you start entering into parallels, perpendicular space-time continuums, where things can be more dense, they can be subtler, time pretty much is altered because you're receding into a completely different perception. Perception is reality. So the moment that you change your perception, you change the entire reality. So the moment that you recede into different or deeper dimensions of the mind, then you instantly change the perception that you have been accustomed to, traditioned unconsciously, and also have been fixated within, which is quote unquote the normal state of awareness, right? But once you get past that, you can see that the fixated reality is just, it's very minute reality, and there's much more realities. You can alter perception very, very simply. And if you want to do it, you can do it through meditation as a starter. Because meditation is literally the way that the Ascended Masters begin to alter perception. The meditation is something the Ascended Masters brought to us. So we will always use meditation. I've used psychedelic drugs as well. They've worked to alter perception. You could enter into a whole different dimension. I've done it sober as well, before I ever took anything. So you can't explain, or you can't bullshit, and you can't fall into any type of belief if you have had the experience of transcending the ego without ever having altered your neurological chemistry in the first place. So you must integrate the shadow. Carl Jung is very famous for that, right? He went into his dreams. He was able to integrate the shadow. He had the whole archetypal system, which is the ego being the most surface, the shadow being the next, the animus being the third layering, and then the self, which the self is the most deepest. This is when you are one self. You are one with the entire universe. But in order to reach that state of oneness, oneself, you must integrate the shadow before you can have the experience of universal consciousness, or oneself, one-selfedness, selflessness. So integrate the shadow. You already know how to do it, because this is the way things are systematically operating. So observe yourself more, because the more that you grow your observation, the more that the whole transmutation of integration is going to accelerate itself, and it just steeps. The more that you grow observation, it starts to steep, and it multiplies itself ad infinitum, and it just goes higher and higher, and everything starts expanding from there. You begin the process of evolution or revolution at a very, very tremendous rate. The more that you intend it, or the more that you grow the observation. This is the investment. All else is triviality. All else is unprogression, and all else is unessential. It's that simple. If we're not doing things to revolutionize planetary consciousness, then we're going straight into our own enslavement and our own extinction, which we will do both for ourselves with the will of the earth if we don't invest in the essentialities. Very, very simple. So you can invest in the triviality, the trivial way of life, but that's not going to help you or your family or the generations to come. That's only going to lead the whole into self-extinction or deeper slavery, whatever you want to call it, right? So make that investment. And by investment, I don't mean money. I don't mean the money that you earn from your laborings. I'm talking about energy, because energy is the real currency. You can't do anything if you don't invest energy in anything. You wouldn't be able to earn your money if you didn't have energy to invest into the laboring which earns you that physical currency. So how are you going to earn what you would think is actual currency without energy or attention? You need energy in order to make what you think is money, which I'm talking about the paper money, papers, or the digital currency, the coding, because that's what it is. It's a coding. But so is energy, because energy is information. What they really want is a form, a certain formulation, an information. They want everything to, it's just a self-organizational system. See, everything is taking form, a geometrical form, which can be seen as a coding. Everything is informational coding, energy. And everything is eternal, right? So obviously, if you get into the ontologics of it, you can definitely have the experience of deeper, more sacred information. But the ontological experiences aren't just able to be grasped, especially when you are not able to properly integrate the shadow to begin, right? So you can definitely start by integrating the shadow. Befriend your darker side. It's this simple. And you think that there may or may not be a double persona, but that's just a thought about it. The whole thought or the whole system of thinking is not actually the reality of things. This is just a type of self-echoing of consciousness that you're kind of entangling with mentally. Overthinking. When people think they're overthinking because you're thinking about thinking. So you see how it's an echoing. You think and you think and you think. You clap and there's an echo to it. So there's a clap and there's a clap and there's a clap and it slowly fades. You think and then you think and then you think and it slowly fades. It's an echoing. So you can literally, when you think you're overthinking, you're just entangling with that echoing, and you've been taught to let's say loathe your self-thinking, right? So when it's echoing and you hate the sound of your own thought, then you begin to hate yourself. And that's what we're calling things like anxiety, depression, right? You just don't love yourself. Just enjoy what is. It's just simple. Be in bliss. Stop conflicting yourself from the diseaseful state. Or stop conflicting yourself from a blissful state, my bad. So the integration of the shadow, befriend your darker side, right? Love your darker side, because you already love your darker side. It's just so that you're acting as though you have to torture yourself, and there's actual torture systems, by the way, which can cause great damage psychologically to any number of people that have been used throughout history, right? Right. So you got to understand that you don't need to torture yourself any longer. Just befriend the shadow. Be in love with the shadow. You love the shadow. The shadow is not separate from you, and it's not a dual personality, although it can be seen as one due to the various different infrastructuring of the mind, right? But it's just it's oneself. There is no separation involved anywhere, ever. There is no separation, ever. Separation is not something that exists. I'm not separate from anybody. There's various energetical fields that are connecting us. The morphogenetic field. This one's scientifically proven. It's not only the morphogenetic field, but this is one that's backed by science. So it gets the Westerners' attention, right? But the morphogenetic field is literally scientific proof, mathematical proof, geometric proof that we are literally interconnected. And through the morphogenesis, there is no separation whatsoever. You're listening to yourself right now. You're talking to yourself. That's the morphogenetic field. Research it. The only reason we don't talk as though you're talking to yourself, even though you are, is because societal conditioning, right? But that's the reality of it. You're just listening to yourself. And life is a dream. And we're all God. Whatever that is, right? Which is everything. Totality. Because there's no separation. When you live in the separation, you're thriving off of fear. You're thriving off of conflict. You're thriving off of arguing. You're thriving off of lower vibration. That's all egoic. That's all egoism. That's all ego. But the moment that you can have that experience that there is no ego, then you can come into higher dimensions of love. Absolute unconditionality, which is what all the sacred figures are telling you. The kingdom of God is within. The kingdom of God is unconditional. Absolutely. It's unconditional love. I don't need a single condition to love another person, because that's a reflection of me. If I don't love myself, how can I ever love another person? If I completely love myself unconditionally, then I completely love another person for no condition, no reason. There needs to be no fairness, no reasoning to it. Just a pure, radiant, blissful love is what it is. And within that state, you can transcend into higher dimensions very, very simply, because you're not clinging to the egoic experience or the bodily experience. Very, very simple. But you need to integrate the shadow in order to do that, because that quote-unquote doppelganger or that quote unquote twin, or that part of you that you're suppressing it, and that suppression of energy leads to various different or it leads to is leading to a corrupted energetical system. And if the energetical system is corrupt in any way, then it keeps you within a type of delusion, which is the egoic experience. Obviously there's more to it, and I can get more precise, but I'm still working on the whole development itself of how to go about explaining the process of self-realization. But essentially, integration of the shadow is the process of realization or self-realization, which all beings, this is what all beings are here to live for, or this is what all beings are learning, realization, or they're coming to realize themselves. This is what everything is doing. Everything is on that journey to self-realization, or growing up, not as an individual but as a species, or maybe even as a planet, right? Because the planet has its own life cycle, and it has to grow into its own state of maturity as well. And the more that the planet reaches peak states of maturity, the more that the inhabitants are joining along, because the inhabitants are just a fractalized growth of the planet itself. So the more that the planet comes to maturity, which it may or may not already be there, then if maturity is even something that you want to characterize for a planet, then the inhabitants, which would include us, also join in on that peak state of life energy, right? Which we're heading into now, because the Earth is heading straight towards the center of the Milky Way, which is a core, and we source our life energy from the core, from the heart, from the center of the Milky Way, from the core of the Earth, right? So the planet is increasing its life energy. This is why the fluctuation of the Earth's Kundalini and everything is coming to be dissolved away. Everything is burning itself up in the mystical fire of Shiva. Shiva's just dancing, but everything's being destroyed, so it can be renewed. Integrating the shadow is very, very simple. The whole process of integration is happening of itself. If you want to accelerate it, grow observation of it, right? So just be aware that the shadow is being integrated, and like magic, it's going to accelerate itself exponentially, and then you get into deeper and deeper experiences, because the energetical flux is no longer being suppressed, but it's released. And with a simple release of energy, the entire experience changes, because your perception changes with the flow of energy, right? So integration of the shadow and conjoining the two energies as well. This is what it is. You're conjoining the energies. You need the lightness, you need the darkness. You got to start by unifying the feminine and the masculine together. This is the key. the Ankh, right, of ancient Egypt. This is a symbol for the unionization of the two energies. And the Ankh is eternal life. Once you unionize the two energies, the feminine and the masculine within yourself, you can come into a state of eternal life because you willingly die. And once you die, then there's nothing to cessate your being. You become all being, omniscient, omnipresent, right? And it's not just a knowledge, it's most definitely a knowledge, but it's also an experience. So it's not something that you just know and you can talk about fancifully, but it's something that you actually experience. And due to the fact that it's something that you actually experience, all of the experience of life completely changes beyond imagination. So you cannot even imagine. You cannot even imagine what going beyond the fixated state of awareness, or whatever you want to call it, right, is, because it's beyond the imagination as well. It's just a complete quantum shift, or it's like a quantum leap, right? You see quantum leaps in sci-fi movies, where they're going into hyperspace, they're traveling beyond the speed of light. Usually is depicted, illustrated as kaleidoscopic imagery, right? They go beyond the speed of light and then everything goes kaleidoscopic. That's taking a quantum leap. Quanta is fluctuation of light beyond its own speed, which is hyper speed, going beyond light, which is literally just ascending into higher vibrational rates. Everything is vibration. The moment that you pick up the rate beyond the speed of light, you enter into hyperspace, and you can take quantum leaps all throughout the universe, which is exactly what sci-fi movies have told us. In order for us to even know and illustrate that in a sci-fi movie, we must have subconsciously or even consciously known the mechanics of being able to do that, right? With or without the spaceships, like the Millennium Falcon, right? But you can do that with your body. You don't need a spaceship. In order to build a spaceship to be able to do that, we must have been able to use that capability through our own body in the first place, right? So hyperspeed, or traveling beyond the speed of light, is the quantum leap. Take the quantum leap and it completely changes the normal experience, because you're ascending into higher and higher dimensions. It's exactly what that is. It's higher dimensions. They had to travel through higher dimensions in order to do what they're doing, right? Very, very simple too. Just be observant of it. Grow your observation. Be aware of the integration of the shadow. Just do that. And it happens of itself. It starts to accelerate itself. And then you get into deeper and deeper states of integration. And then you begin to understand through mystical experience that you are a God. Mystical experience being experiences that are transcendent in their nature. By transcendent, I'm talking about beyond the body and beyond the mind, right? And this is something that's happening. This is something that's happening naturally. You don't need to do anything to be able to come into that state of godliness. But you can, if you want to, if you want to accelerate it, if you want to go faster, right? But it's going to happen anyway to everybody. Nobody's excluded. everybody is included, because that's just the time. That's what's occurring, right? So integrate the shadow. Do this for yourself. But it's happening anyway, right? But you can accelerate it if you just want to. So that's going to be it for today's video. Once again, peace out. Well, love and have a great evening.